Trained in the shadows of Roscoe Roma, Eve seeks vengeance for her father's murder. But standing in her way is a living legend, John Wick himself. One mission, one war. And only hours before midnight, this is Ballerina, where grace meets death. The film opens with a scene of Eve sitting in a police station, holding a ballet dancer toy in her hands, with blood on her face. What happened to the child? Let's dive in. Then a flashback is shown, taking us to the time when Eve was living her life with her father, Javier, who affectionately tells her that she is just like her sister. Then, he gives her the ballet dancer toy. Javier, who was a part of Roscoe Roma, is seen spending time with his daughter. But soon, we see a team of assassins emerging from the water and launching an attack on their house. They defeat the security guards and break into the villa. Javier does everything he can to protect Eve using distractions and hidden passages. He hides her in a secret room. Then a fight breaks out and the assassins overpower him. He is confronted by the leader of the group known as the Chancellor, who accuses Javier of betrayal and demands that Eve be handed over. He loads a bullet into his gun and threatens that Eve's life now depends on an impossible decision. Either Javier kills himself, or they will kill both father and daughter. Javier points the gun at himself, but just as he is about to pull the trigger, Eve calls out to him and he hesitates. A fight erupts among everyone. The Chancellor leaves during the chaos. One of the assassins starts stabbing Javier with a knife, and Eve, rushing out, picks up a fallen gun near an assassin who has a cross symbol on his arm and shoots the attacker. Javier and Eve move through the villa together, activating time bombs and trying to escape. However, Javier is already badly injured. When the bomb explodes, the Chancellor assumes no one survived and leaves. But Javier stays alive just long enough to speak to Eve one last time. He expresses his love before dying in her arms. The scene then shifts back to Eve sitting in the police station when a man named Winston approaches her, offers comfort, and takes her to the Roscoe Roma Theater, a place where both artistic and defensive skills are trained, all under the director's control. There, Eve is introduced to her mentor Noeji, who explains that this place turns people into survivors and performers, mastering both strength and grace. Winston decides to keep the truth about Eve's parents hidden for now. The director warmly welcomes Eve, and after that, Winston gives her a symbolic gift, assuring her that she will never be alone. Noeji tells Eve that her father also once worked there, and then explains the two choices in their world: to kill or to save. In this field, Eve must make that choice of her own free will. Now the story jumps forward 12 years. Eve is shown undergoing intense training for both dancing and Assassin's Field. During this time, she becomes friend with a girl named Tatiana. In a combat session, Eve faces a much stronger opponent. Initially, she feels nervous, but with encouragement from her trainer, Noeji, she regains her confidence and eventually defeats several of the top trainees, impressing Noeji. One day, Tatiana suddenly disappears. When Eve asks the director about her, she finds out Tatiana was sent away for ballet dancing because she lacked the qualities needed to become an assassin. Upset by this, Eve demands her first mission. The director agrees, but tells her she must first pass a final test. Eve is brought to a room with a pistol placed on a table. Soon, another woman enters, Shays, a former Roscoe Roma assassin, who had once disobeyed orders and is now being punished. When the bell rings, both reach for the pistol. Eve hesitates for a moment, but the other woman fires first, forcing Eve to instinctively shoot and kill her. This moment triggers a painful memory of Evie's childhood when she had shot cult members to protect her father. Later, tension rises at the training center when word spreads that John Wick is present. He arrives seeking sanctuary, and a Roscoe Roma tattoo is inscribed on his back. Eve secretly watches this. As John prepares to leave, Eve stops him. They exchange brief words. Eve tells him she wants to be like him. John offers her a chance to walk away from this life, but Eve remains committed to her path. Then Noeji informs Eve of her final test.
A mobster named Xiang is targeting a girl named Park at a nightclub. Eve's mission is to protect Park, but she can only use a gun loaded with rubber bullets. At the club, Eve spots Park on the dance floor. Zhang arrives with his men and grabs Park. Eve intervenes immediately. The men attack her, but she skillfully takes them down one by one using rubber bullets. Finally, Xiang himself steps forward. Though he's stronger, Eve defeats him using speed and smart tactics. She spares his life and escapes with Park.
The test is complete. The director officially grants Eve the title of Roscoe Assassin and gives her the same tattoos that her father once had. 2 months later, we see a sharp object stabbed in Eve's shoulder. Here, Eve completes her first contract and leaves with the payment, grabbing weapons from dead bodies. However, her car is suddenly rammed by another vehicle. A thug steps out and attacks her, but she kills him. On his hand, she notices the same symbol she remembers from the killers who murdered her father. Eve brings the thug's severed hand to the director and questions her. When she asks for the cult's location, the director refuses, explaining there is an old agreement between Roscoe and the cult. Both sides stay out of each other's affairs. Unwilling to accept this, Eve visits the Continental Hotel and meets Karen, who is happy to see her. Eve requests a meeting with Winston and returns the coin he once gave her. Winston tells her the group is part of a dangerous mafia cult, and one of their men, Daniel Pinus, currently hiding at the Prague Continental. He confirms with the high table that there's a $2 million bounty on Daniel and hands Eve his photo. Eve travels to Prague and books a room next to Daniel's. At the same time, Lena, sniper and cult member, watches Daniel from a distance. When a hitman sees Eve sneak into Daniel's room, he informs Lena, so she pauses in surprise. Inside, Eve finds a little girl named Ella. Suddenly, Daniel tries to attack her from behind. But when Eve sees Daniel with Ella, Daniel warns her about the danger she's walking into. Outside, Lena doubles the bounty on Daniel, prompting the entire hotel to turn against him. Hitmen attack, and Daniel and Eve fight them off together. In the elevator, Daniel pleads with Eve to protect Ella. She takes the girl while Daniel stays behind to face the attackers. On the ground floor, the cult's deadly assassin Dex ambushes Daniel and shoots him multiple times. Then he hits Eve, knocks her unconscious, and escapes with Ella, as ordered by Lena. Later, Lena reports to her boss, the Chancellor, and explains the entire situation. When asked about Eve, Lena reveals she handed her over to the Continental Hotel, where the rules forbid killing, meaning the hotel management will decide her fate. When questioned, Eve clearly states that she neither started the fight nor took anyone's life. After hearing her, the Continental management pardons Eve and handles the other hired killers themselves. However, they ban Eve from ever entering the hotel again. Eve accepts the decision and leaves. Soon after, she visits a local gun shop, where she meets the owner, Harry. She gives him a Continental coin and shows a cult symbol requesting information. But Harry refuses, citing strict rules that forbid sharing such secrets. Eve still smiles and asks Harry to show her the best weapons. Harry leads her to the basement, where a hidden modern arsenal is kept. While Eve is inspecting the weapons, the cult finds out she's alive and immediately sends a squad to attack. An intense battle erupts. Harry gets injured, but Eve fights fiercely, using explosives to take down each attacker until the area is cleared. Later, Eve apologizes to Harry. However, driven by his own desire for revenge, Harry gives her the location of a town called Holstadt, where several cult members are reportedly hiding. Armed and ready, Eve sets out for Holstadt. The next morning, she arrives in the snowy town, where a watcher named Jasper spots her. In a local shop, she sees a ballerina toy that reminds her of childhood. The shop also has a bar. As Eve orders a drink, people quickly leave with their children in fear. Suddenly, a man attacks her. Eve defeats him. On her way upstairs, the bartender ambushes her, but she injures her too. Meanwhile, more killers arrive in town. Eve fights them alone, navigating the alleys, while Jasper secretly alerts Chancellor. The town goes into lockdown, and cult members spread out in search of Eve. She takes down many enemies, but is eventually surrounded and collapses from exhaustion. Lena arrives to assess her condition and notices a Rusker Roma tattoo on Eve's back. Meanwhile, Chancellor visits his granddaughter, Ella, who coldly rejects him as she hates him. Lena informs Chancellor that Eve has been captured and confirms she is connected to Rusker Roma. Eve regains consciousness and confronts Chancellor, who reveals he once had a peace pact with the director. Eve denies any current ties to Rusker Roma, but Chancellor questions her involvement with Daniel. Eve realizes it was Chancellor who had sent assassins after Daniel. When she brings up her father Javier, Chancellor is visibly shaken. Outside, he tells Lena that Eve is her sister. Inside, Eve kills the guards and escapes. Lena follows her, and the two clash emotionally in a nearby house. Lena reveals they are sisters, but Eve, filled with pain and rage, refuses to accept the cult as home, blaming them for her father's death. Meanwhile, Chancellor orders both sisters to be eliminated and bombs are thrown into the house, causing a massive explosion. Eve is injured and sees Lena dying beside her. Lena confesses that she missed her. After a last breath, she passes away. Shortly after, cult gang members storm the house, but Eve, now determined, picks up a sword and kills them all. She then sends a message to the Chancellor, declaring the war will end only with his death. In response, Chancellor contacts the director to complain, but she firmly states that Eve no longer belongs to them. Chancellor threatens that if Eve doesn't leave the city by midnight, war will begin. The director informs that she's sending a special operative to end everything before midnight. Eve, hiding in a secluded place, is tending to her wounds as night falls over the city. Meanwhile, John Wick enters the city. Chancellor, pleased, orders his men to shoot Eve on sight, but strictly forbids anyone from touching John. John tracks Eve down and gives her one last chance to walk away, but she refuses. A fierce fight breaks out between them. John tries to stop her without killing her, but Eve fights back with determination. Eventually, John brings her down. Eve then reveals that Chancellor was the one who murdered her father. John says he's been ordered to end it all by midnight, but if she kills Chancellor before that and leaves the city, he won't stop her. Eve agrees. Then we see Eve begin eliminating Chancellor's men in the streets. When Chancellor learns this, he unleashes all his loyal followers to hunt her down. Eve arms herself with a flamethrower and fights brutally. During this, Dex also arrives with a flamethrower. Escaping carefully, Eve hides in a fire station and attacks Dex with a water hose. When the water runs out and Dex is about to kill her, John appears and causes an explosion in Dex's gas line, killing him in flames. Eve thanks John and continues forward, while John keeps fighting off goons on his own path. Eve intercepts Chancellor's getaway car and kills the driver. Chancellor offers her one final deal to join him, but without a word, she shoots him dead. John watches from afar, knowing the war is finally over. The director calls John Wick and asks if Eve has died. John tells her that the Chancellor has died, which is quite shocking for the director. Eve takes Ella and leaves the city. Then we see Daniel, who is in the hospital, reunites with Ella, and they share a joyful moment. On the other hand, Eve books room number 814, where Winston warns Eve about her enemies. In the final scene, Tatiana is performing on stage while Eve silently watches he from the crowd. Meanwhile, cult members gather and issue a new contract, a $5 million bounty on Eve. The entire Assassin network receives the alert. Eve sees the message and silently disappears into the shadows, and thus the story of Ballerina comes to an end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We will be back soon with another exciting recap.
Thanks for watching.